Today I speak with a very well-known individual in the carnivore and ancestral health space, Dr. Anthony Chaffee. You've probably already come across his name and his work, as he's been one of the most prominent speakers in the carnivore space right now. Dr. Chaffee is a neurosurgeon resident. He also runs his own functional medicine practice, focusing on metabolic health, and he has his own podcast and YouTube channel, Plant Free MD. He has an amazing repertoire of information, and in this episode, I pick his brain on the evidence supporting carnivore diets, including anthropological and biological evidence, as well as a deep analysis of plant toxins and their potential role in health. And of course, before we jump in, this podcast is brought to you by Vital Origin, providing Australia's most ethical animal-based supplements, helping you regain your natural vitality. And all of our listeners of this podcast can get an extra 10% off everything in store by using the coupon code SOURCE10 at checkout. All right, let's jump into the show with Dr. Anthony Chaffee. Welcome to the Health from the Source podcast, where we're dedicated to educating people about health, ancestral nose-to-tail nutrition, regenerative agriculture, and the interplay between environment, health, and sustainability. All right, Anthony, thank you so much for joining me on the podcast.
Oh, you're very welcome. Thank you for having me.
Thank you. As I said offline, I've been following your work for quite some time, and I imagine most people in the space probably know who you are, have come across some of your work now. So very excited to finally have a chat with you and dive into carnivore. But for those who maybe haven't come across you yet and haven't seen some of your work, it's always nice to get a bit of your background. So I thought we'd start there and see about how you got into this space and how you found the carnivore diet.
Sure. Well, my name is Dr. Anthony Chaffee. I'm an American medical doctor. I currently practice in Australia, and I'm a neurosurgical resident, but I also have a private practice in functional medicine, metabolic medicine, where I try to optimize people's health using largely diet and lifestyle interventions that can address underlying root causes of disease as opposed to just trying to paper over them with medications. There's definitely a very major part of, well, I think really the only real part of medicine is that sort of acute care, the things that we've been doing for thousands of years, the accidents and injuries, pregnancy and childbirth, infectious disease, congenital and genetic issues, poisonings, toxins, and malnutrition, those things, that's real medicine to me. All these chronic diseases have just sparked up in the last several decades. Really, many of them didn't even exist in any real number before the last 100 plus years ago. That these are largely addressed by diet and lifestyle, and that addresses the underlying root cause. Even autoimmune diseases can be addressed by, especially autoimmune diseases, can be addressed by diet and lifestyle. So that's what I try to do as a mainstay, but I also like the acute medicine, the life and death sort of things. Someone comes in an accident in the middle of the night and you have to decompress their brain because they're bleeding and they're going to die. That's very exciting for me, and that's something that I think is very important to do, and I like being able to do that for people. So I like both, but I want to address the chronic disease side of things, because if we can just get rid of that and go away, then we can go back to doing real medicine where we're dealing with things that are out of our control, that we can't address with just simple lifestyle changes. I came to this sort of inadvertently 24 years ago. I was taking a class in cancer biology at the University of Washington in Seattle in my undergraduate degree, and during my undergraduate training. And I had already taken botany and biology and understood that plants have toxins. They defend themselves in that way because they can't run away or fight back like other animals, but they're living things, and all living things can defend themselves because everything's trying to eat everything in the wild. That's how it is. It's kill or be killed. And so the same goes for plants as well as animals. And they have about 1 million different defense chemicals that they use to stop other animals from attacking them and eating them. And so I already knew that, but then you're told, all these plants are toxic and now go home and eat your vegetables, and you don't think anything about it. You just think like, oh, well, those are the ones I'm supposed to eat. And my cancer biology professor had a very different opinion. He felt that they weren't good to eat, and that a lot of these toxins actually had carcinogenic properties shown in animal studies and all these sorts of things. And they cataloged these things and categorized them and quantified them. And so when I was taking that class, he showed us lists, pages and pages and pages of vegetables, fruits, and produce items that we would all commonly eat. And you'd think, no, there's definitely no problem with that. And they had numbers of carcinogens next to them, and Brussels sprouts had 136 known carcinogens, and mushrooms had over 100 known carcinogens, but also spinach and kale and lettuce, celery, cabbage, cucumber, broccoli. They all had dozens, if not over 100 known carcinogens. In fact, I didn't see a single one under 60. So they're actually quite abundant. And so we were very taken aback by this. We're all looking around wildly. How the hell is this going on? Someone must be joking. I was looking for like a TA somewhere, like laughing in the corner, like what the hell is going on? And there was nothing. No one was in on the joke. So we realized he wasn't joking. And we all sort of settled down. We were all a bit uneasy. And I remember thinking in my head, I was like, well, but vegetables are still good for you though, right? And as soon as I said that, he just he gave us a funny look. And he just said, I don't eat salad. I don't eat vegetables. I don't let my kids eat vegetables. Plants are trying to kill you. I was like, right, screw plants. And I just stopped. And I went to the grocery store and I was just like, well, what the hell? Do I eat? Everything's a plant. Everything has plants in it, or at least has it as an ingredient. And so I was just walking around. I'm like, what do I eat? What do I eat? What the hell can I eat? I'm just looking for anything that's not a plant. And or it doesn't have plants in it. And so I came across eggs. I was like, eggs, I can eat eggs. And then meat, I can eat meat that doesn't come from a plant. And so I just ate eggs and meat for the next 5 years. And that was a period of my life that I've never felt better in my life. I just felt like a superhuman. And my rugby performance just went through the roof. I was playing professional rugby for about 10 years before medical school. And that just took off. I was in university full time, and then I played for the university team, and then I played for the premiership team in my city. And we played in the Canadian premiership as well as the top leagues in America also, and like the Super League and the USA Division I. So we played in all the top leagues in North America. And so I was just playing games and games and games and training all the time. And I just felt like a superhero. I just felt superhuman. I couldn't get tired. I couldn't run out of energy. My athletic performance was just going up at an exponential pace. My fitness was growing at an exponential pace, far past what my teammates were experiencing. And at the same time, I stopped drinking during the rugby season as well. So I stopped drinking. I stopped eating plants, and it just changed my life in so many positive ways. I slipped off of that when I was 25, when I was playing professionally in England, and some of the bread was, some of the meat was breaded or had like little crumbs on it. And I said the same thing to myself that all these different people are now trying to all these naysayers are saying, no, there's no toxins. Dose makes the poison.
Just a little bit. Yeah.
Just a little bit of cyanide is fine. Just a little bit of arsenic, that's not a big deal.
Never hurt anyone.
No, exactly. And so, not just the entire Roman civilization, so, so it's the same thing. It's, oh, well, dose makes the poison. Okay, what's the dose? You have to know the dose. You have to quantify that. And we have in a lot of things. And we eat almonds, and we eat flaxseed, and we eat, some people put whole apples in to juice them. The seeds have cyanide as well. 50 to 300 milligrams of cyanide can kill you, right?
Yeah.
One serving of flaxseed can have 6 milligrams of cyanide, right? So 10 servings of flaxseed in a day is if it's not going to kill you, it's going to mess you up. It's not going to be good. And sublethal doses are well known, according to the CDC and the WHO, to cause multi-organ damage, goiters, thyroid dysfunction, and neurological dysfunction. So, the idea, dose makes the poison, you should just eat as much as you want. Well, dose does make the poison, and so you need to know what that dose is. And they don't even ask that question. But the WHO says that there is no safe amount of cyanide. You should just look to avoid it, as opposed to try to say, well, don't eat more than this. Okay, why the hell isn't that on packets of almonds, right? Yeah. there's no safe amount of almonds
talked about.
No, it's never. Or on flaxseed, or on cassava. Cassava is has a lot of cyanogenic glycosides. Bitter cassava will just kill you. That has to be especially treated to reduce the amount of cyanide, but it doesn't eliminate the cyanide. Yeah. Sweet cassava, they just eat that straight, and that has its own cyanide in it as well, just less than the bitter cassava. And that is the staple food for 750 million people in the tropics. It's their number one source of calories for 750 million people. And this can cause serious long-term harm at sublethal doses. No warning labels on any of this stuff. They have cassava chips. You just get like potato chips made out
Yeah,
of
it's
cassava.
the new superfoods, right?
Well, that's it. Yeah. And it's like cyanide is the new superfood, I guess, you know?
Yeah.
And
We should
so
just start
whatever,
adding lead back into things and see how that goes.
yeah, exactly. It's well, that's it. Anything they're trying to sell you is the new superfood. Like, hey, we have too much of this shit. Just call it a superfood and people will buy it, you know?
Yeah.
And, so, yeah. So, you know, I always think to myself the same thing. It's like, well, is it that bad to have this little bit of crumbing on the chicken? Because it was just much more convenient for me. I didn't have the same access to meat in the UK as I did in the US, and it was a bit difficult. And I was just sort of getting annoyed with it. And so this was easy. This was convenient. It was cooked chicken drumsticks, and it was just I could just buy a couple packs of that, and I could just I could just eat that, and that could be my food for the day. And I did it, a couple of days a week. I didn't do it all the time, but I was thinking, well, dose makes the poison. Like maybe it's not that bad. It's just a little bit of crumbs. And I realized that now that, yeah, dose does make the poison. The dose is really small. And so just having some crumbed chicken a few times a week, that was enough to spoil a lot of this. I was still only eating meat except for those little crumbs. And I remember a couple months into it, now I didn't feel like a superhuman. Now I didn't have just boundless energy. Now I wasn't able to just push myself as hard as I could for as long as I wanted. I was getting aches and pains and sores and stiffness, and I never had that. I was thinking I was getting injured. I was having these injuries. I'm like, what the hell is going on? Why do I always hurt? This is crazy. It must be an injury, because I never got sore. I never got sore after working out. Now I'm sore all the time. Now my groin's hurting. I'm like, Jesus, did I pull something? Do I have like a hernia? Like, what the hell is going on here? I had no idea what was going on. And I remember thinking to myself, why don't I feel as superhuman amazing as I normally do? Am I just not working out as hard? Am I not pushing myself? I'm 25 now. Is that it? I'm over the hill. It's just dying,
It's
going
all
downhill.
age now.
That's it. Whereas, I was 25 when I went to England. Right. And now I'm just 3 months on, and now I feel like I'm an old man. It's like, God, was that it? Was it that fast?
Past your prime now.
Yeah, that's it. And then, now looking back, that was when I started slipping off, and I started, had the crumb things. And then I was like, okay, well, maybe a little something. And I stopped thinking about it. It used to be like not eating anything with any plants ever, to maybe some are okay. And then it was like a little bit more and a little bit more and a little bit more. And then the whole vegan plant-based things, the Gomes diet with Dr. Furman started coming out. And so you have to have, all these veggies. They're all very important and all that. So I was like, really? I mean, they have carcinogens. Oh, but it has these things that are good for you. And I was like, right. But they can also have toxins in them as well, And I didn't really buy it, but you just get so many people saying like, okay, all right, I'll eat some damn vegetables. I was still mostly eating meat. It was always clean, but I just ate some veggies out of sufferance, and just to make other people happy. And so I went on like that. And I didn't feel as good. I never felt like I did before. And I was still able to perform. I played another 5 years of high level rugby, and I even played high level rugby during and after medical school as well. But I had to work a lot harder for it. And so if I stopped training, I would instantly start getting out of shape. I'd start losing muscle, and I'd start putting on fat. I had to constantly be working out at a high level to maintain a lean muscular physique, which I did. And so I was able to, but as soon as it slowed down, entropy set in, and I just started breaking down. Whereas during that time before, I was just always in shape, and it was, oh wow, you're in such good shape. You're in such good shape. And I hadn't, been running for a month. So I'm like, no, I'm completely out of shape. I've got to go run and work out. And they're like, you look in pretty good shape to me, because we associate that appearance with actual athletic, conditioning, but that wasn't the case. I always had that appearance, even if I wasn't, training at the time. And then at 38, I came across information that just said, no, biologically, humans just really are carnivores. And that's something I learned as a kid, that humans are apex predators. Well, apex predators by definition are carnivores. And so I came across this again at 38, and it stuck this time because, when you're a kid and you say humans are apex predators, we've been hunting for 2 million years. Apex predators are carnivores. Now go home and eat your vegetables, and meat's bad for you. Like, that doesn't make sense. If you told that to an adult, who was clear of mind and thought, hadn't come across this stuff before, you just said that to him and be like, hold on a second, that doesn't make any sense. But you indoctrinate a child, and they're like, okay, well, I'm just doing what I'm told. Even though I hate vegetables, that should tell you too, that bitter taste.
Well, that's always interesting, right? Like, kids right off the bat, you give them bitter vegetables, usually they're repulsed by it initially.
Yeah. And why would we have evolved to hate the taste of something good for us? That doesn't make sense. That bitter taste is not the plant itself that's bitter. That's your brain reacting to it, saying that's bad, spit it out, right? That's a response from your brain. And there's a book called Most Delicious Poisons. It's all about spices and seasonings, and about how those strong flavors are actually the most toxic part of the plants. And that's what our brain's responding to, saying, like, screaming at us, don't eat this. This is poison, which is, if people want to laugh, they go on YouTube and look up the cinnamon challenge, where people take a spoonful of cinnamon, put it in their mouth, and the challenge is you try to swallow this stuff, and
good luck.
And you just can't do it. Like, you're just spluttering and puking and spitting, and it's just horrible, and your body just rebels completely because it's like, this is poison. I'm not letting you do this to us, and that's
at high doses. Oh no, it's nutmeg. Nutmeg at really high doses can also be quite toxic as well. I've got a good story from a doctor friend of mine who ended up on quite a interesting story, just overdosing on nutmeg. Yeah,
well, it's a hallucinogen. It's hallucinogen.
Yeah, he had a very significant hallucinogen experience.
Yeah. So that's the thing. You can. I knew kids who would do that, who they would get nutmeg all crushed up and you'd make tea out of it, and you drink it, and it was like, some sort of peyote tea sort of thing. So it's a known hallucinogen, and we put this in coffees. I mean, I give it to kids, and we're like, oh, great idea. Well, dose makes the poison. Yeah, sure, okay. How much poison do you want to give to your kids? I mean, like, this is just, you're playing with fire. I mean, it's not a great idea. And so, why would you think that this bitter taste, this horrible taste, is something that's good for you? Of course it's not. And so, I came across that. It's just, no, humans really are carnivores. It's just the kind of animal we are biologically. And all animals have a species-specific diet. You look at all animals throughout nature, if you feed them things that they're not designed to eat, they will get very sick, especially other plants that they're not designed to eat. There's whole fields of veterinary medicine about livestock getting into running out of forage and running out of hay or whatever, and they start eating other plants they normally wouldn't. They get sick, and they can get very sick. There's big head, limp neck, big tongue, crazy cow syndrome, to name 4 of many dozens that are a consequence of eating a plant that they're not designed to eat, and they get very sick, and they get specific symptoms and diseases from that. And then nutritional deficiencies, which I think all our non-communicable chronic diseases are a combination of toxicities and malnutrition. So, like, to use the cow example or the livestock example, all of those are toxicities, right? So those are toxicities like big hand, limp neck, crazy cow syndrome, big tongue. But then nutritional deficiencies, right? Because we see this in veterinary medicine as well, because cows are valuable. They cost money. And so they're having a problem saying, hey, I'm having all these problems with my cows. You need to figure out what the hell is going on. It's not just like, oh, it just happens, genetics. All right, sorry, that'll be $500, No, that's not how it is. That's how you do it in humans, because humans are inherently don't have a value, but because we own cows and they are profitable to people, they've actually invested time and money to see what the hell is going on. The profit incentive for humans is to keep people sick and treat the symptoms of that disease forever, like diabetes or autoimmune diseases. You put a Band-Aid on it, a very expensive Band-Aid, and you put that on for the rest of their life. Statins, they're trying to get that on younger and younger and younger and younger, so that people are on statins forever, so that they can make money forever. Like any good drug dealer, they try to hook them early and get them to be a customer for life. But in veterinary medicine, because these things actually have an inherent value, they have to figure out what the hell's going on. So they figured out that these diseases are actually a consequence of eating the wrong plant. And then muscular dystrophy. Cows actually get muscular dystrophy. And this is something I've been trying to say this more and more, because I'm hoping that someone has muscular or knows someone with muscular dystrophy, or knows a researcher who's involved with muscular dystrophy, to ask this question. Cows have muscular dystrophy, and it's the exact same presentation as human muscular dystrophy, but they figured out that it's actually a nutritional deficiency. So it's called nutritional muscular dystrophy in cows, and it comes from a selenium deficiency. So when
I hadn't
cows
heard of
get,
that.
yeah, so when cows get deficient in selenium, they get muscular dystrophy. Has anyone ever asked if human muscular dystrophy may be nutritional as well? I hope that they have, but I suspect that they have not. And so what would be very interesting is to test kids with muscular dystrophy. Obviously, it would be in genetically susceptible kids. It's not going to necessarily be on everybody, but check these kids for nutritional deficiencies such as selenium. Selenium is not something that people check for almost ever.
No.
And so, this is it's worth asking anyway. And if you get a bunch of kids and you check their selenium, you check all these other micronutrients, and they all seem normal, fine, fine. But it's the exact same disease. Why aren't we asking the exact same questions? It's a simple avenue for research anyway, and it's such a nasty disease that if you could just give somebody proper nutrition and it fixes it.
Simple.
Why would we not at least try that? So
I've talked about that before. Just in general in medicine, the comparison of veterinary medicine versus conventional medicine, like it just seems very different paradigms. Like they ask the question of why and then address that, opposed to conventional, like, well, here's some drugs, that'll do it, move on.
Well, yeah, and the thing is, though, there is that different paradigm, and I think that is a consequence of the pharmaceutical industry being involved in medicine. Now they're involved in veterinary medicine as well, but because these animals have an inherent value, like from a livestock point of view, you have a herd of cows that are getting sick, and like, hey, you need to figure out what the hell is going on here. You can't, if you have a whole bunch of people die, it's like, oh, that's such a shame.
Just another statistic, though.
Yeah, that's it. And it's just like, but nothing happens. It's like, okay, no, but I'm going to lose millions of dollars here because my herd is dying. So we need to figure this out, get this going. And so, that's, and so, you can get, private philanthropies and things like that. And that's a lot of what finds cures for diseases are these private philanthropies. And that was historically what happened. Some wealthy benefactor would say, okay, let's go looking for something. Let's build a hospital wing. Let's go do this, that, and the other. And they would donate this money. And now we have the pharmaceutical industry being the major benefactor of medicine. And so they're doing the vast majority of research, but it's a product development model. They're trying to have something at the end of it, which is totally fine. Like you have to have a profit incentive to put in billions of dollars of research money. Okay, but if I'm not getting anything on the to show for it, like I can't afford to do this. This isn't a charity. This is a business, and that's fine. But what that's done is it's turned that into a product development model, as opposed to let's cure diseases. Let's find the underlying root cause of this disease and then cure it. They're saying, hey, what's going on here? How can I do a medicine that helps the symptoms so that you can live with this, but not actually address the underlying root cause? So that's what they're looking for. Goldman Sachs, they had a bit of a kerfuffle because one of their presentations got leaked out to the public, and one of their slides said, is it a viable business model to cure disease? Right? Or really what we should do is we should treat disease, not cure it, not get rid of it, but perpetuate it, right? So if you found the cure for polio, and you got everybody off these iron lungs, you've destroyed the iron lung industry, and all these medicines. So what's a better, and that's it. There's one less disease that you can treat people for. It's because it's gone now. What about just not doing that, not curing it, but giving people medicine so they can live with it, like diabetes, like heart disease, like cancer, like autoimmunity, these sorts of things. And there's big industry in that. I did a presentation that I'm putting together where I go through a lot of these statistics, but the money is insane. So worldwide, we're spending about, just for the top 5 non-communicable diseases, so things like mental health, cardiovascular disease, diabetes, cancer, and pulmonary respiratory issues. So just those 5, that accounts for about over $13 trillion worth of spending on treating those diseases, just those 5. So $15 trillion by 2030, it's expected. So
Yeah.
Just a bit below that now, but it's that's how much we're spending on this. So that money is going to companies, right? That's going to people that say, well, we want to continue this. So that's what they perpetuate. So those are the studies they're putting out. The editor-in-chief of the Lancet and another editor-in-chief of the New England Journal of Medicine, so 2 separate people, have each independently said that you cannot trust literature anymore. You cannot trust the scientific papers anymore, because most of them are funded by or directly produced by the industries that profit from them, and or are heavily influenced by them. They're very corrupt. And they said there's like at least half you just can't trust. They're just completely fraudulent. And they said, like, this doesn't make me happy to say this, but this is something that I've come to. We cannot trust the studies anymore. We cannot trust expert opinion anymore, because it's corrupt and it's corrupted. So, we're sort of living in this very strange time now, where a lot of the medical literature and basically all of the nutritional literature is funded by or made by the people that profit most by getting it wrong and not helping us out at all. So we need to go back to what we were doing in Victorian era, back in the 1800s, where people were actually saying, how do we cure disease? Let's find out what's going on here. Let's try to see how we can fix this. And they had a very different incentive. Now everything's funded by the wrong people. They're funded by the people that profit from us being sick. So you have nutritional studies being funded by Coca-Cola and Pepsi and Kellogg's and all these sorts of things. And just Coca-Cola alone spends 11 times the amount of money on nutritional research every year than the NIH, right? Jeez. That's just Coca-Cola, right? Jeez. So all these other ones are doing this too. So all this nutritional research about how sugar's not all that bad. It's just calories in, calories out. It's meat's really not good for you. All that sort of stuff. So it's all being paid for by the people trying to sell you this garbage and make you sick and make you then need to buy all these expensive pharmaceuticals to treat the problems that are happening to your body because you're eating this processed garbage. Say anything you want about how we evolved and what we evolved on and all these sorts of things. I mean, all the hard evidence shows that we've been carnivores. Some maniacs are trying to argue that like we've actually been herbivores this whole time. I think it's probably because of all the cave paintings of salads and growing corn that we see,
That's right.
and not
There's
hunting elephants.
Plenty of those around.
Yeah, exactly. Just all over the place, and so, they're making the argument from an ethical point of view. Oh, you should eat vegetables, or fat makes you fat, and all that sort of crap. All of it's wrong, but at least they didn't try to say like, well, but we've known forever that humans have been apex predators for 2 million years, and we actually are humans because our ancestors went carnivore, and that's when our evolution leapfrogged and just started really taking off, and our brain started developing much more quickly, and our height and brain size went way up. 10,000 years ago with agriculture was going up, and then bang, straight down.
Plummet.
Our brain size went down by 11% for adult men and 17% for adult women, and that's persisted to this day. It didn't take hundreds of years, didn't take thousands of years. It was immediate, and the height dropped down too by an average of 4 or 5 inches. Everywhere, anywhere you see agriculture and people going in, even the Native Americans, Native Australians in the last 100 years getting put onto a more Western diet from a hunter-gatherer past, mostly hunter, they dropped in height and health
Yeah, we
very
saw all
quickly.
sorts of increases in other nutritional deficiencies. So things like beriberi, Wernicke's
Hmm.
disease, like all these things just skyrocketed because we switched to a very nutrient poor, grain based, Neolithic based diet. And we have
Hmm.
pretty good evidence for a lot of that. But
Yeah.
it's funny because, again, the so much in the mainstream and, all these propaganda documentaries and things coming out now, people are making the argument that, yeah, we're more herbivores, or evolution doesn't show that we were probably more towards carnivores. So it's something I wanted to dig into because you've done a really good job in breaking some of this down. And I've talked about a couple of things like expensive tissue hypothesis and some of our physiology, but it'd be great to hear from your perspective some of the evidence, both anthropologically and based on biology and physiology, of why we probably are more towards carnivores.
Yeah. Well, I mean, you can just look at what our bodies are meant and designed to digest and absorb. There are nutrients that exist in meat that you have to have that you cannot get from plants. There's nothing in plants that you have to have that you cannot get from meat. So first of all, right there, we are obligated to eat meat. We have to eat meat, um, or else you won't live, you won't survive, and children won't
That should
develop.
end the argument right there.
Yeah, I mean, it's just what do you require? You require nutrients from meat. I mean, and most people on the vegan side of things will say, yeah, you need B12, but you can supplement. So they go from an ethical side of things. Well, we like animals. We don't want to eat animals. So supplement with B12. Okay. Well, that's an argument. We can get to it. It's not complete. There are a lot of other things that we miss out on from a nutrition standpoint, but also there are toxins in these plants as well. But even then, at least they admit you can't get B12. So we couldn't possibly have been vegetarian, vegan, herbivores, right? Because we couldn't get B12 from that. And there's a lot of other things like DHA, EPA, retinol, K2, all these other sorts of things. There are thousands of micronutrients that we don't even have names for that exist in meat that we have to have that don't come from plants. And so just right there, there are things you have to eat meat. We are obligated to eat meat. We cannot get by just eating plants out in the wild. We're not talking about supplements. We're talking about our origins. And so that's a number one. But our teeth, we say, oh, they're flat, aren't they? Oh, that's like horses' teeth. They're flat. Herbivores' teeth, they're flat. They're not pointy and sharp like a carnivore. Okay, well, how many fish don't have teeth and eat other fish, right? So like most fish are carnivores. They eat other fish and they don't even have teeth, right?
Hmm.
So birds have beaks, right? Some eat insects, some eat other animals, some eat other birds, and some eat seeds, right? They all have beaks. None of them have teeth, right?
Yep.
And gorillas have big fangs and big scary teeth. They don't go around hunting and eating meat too. So fangs don't necessarily mean carnivore. And small teeth or no teeth don't necessarily mean herbivore, right? So we have primate teeth. We have teeth that primates have, right? And so we have similar teeth to gorillas, but we have carnivorous adaptations because we're eating about 8 million years ago. We started eating some meat, and that's when we diverged evolutionarily. We started eating more and more meat, started having more and more genetic changes and physical changes that complemented this. So we had bigger teeth and jaws, and they got smaller and smaller and smaller because we're eating softer and softer food. We're not chewing on sticks all day like a gorilla. So our jaws got smaller, our teeth got smaller, and our temporalis muscles got smaller. We have this little temporalis muscles right here, and if anyone's ever done, craniotomy or seen that sort of surgery, it's actually quite a small muscle, sort of spans about from here to here, and it's thin. It's like less than half a centimeter, or maybe about a centimeter for some people. So it's not very big. But you look at a gorilla's head, and it has this bulbous head. Most of that is temporalis muscle, and it has this big ridge of bones, inch and a half thick all the way through there and on his crest, and that's where the muscles attach. Massive muscles of mastication connecting to this massive jaw with big teeth because they're chewing up. A big silverback gorilla can eat around 60 pounds of leaves a day. So you have a lot of chewing,
Jeez.
a lot of chewing, a lot of chewing. So you need big teeth and you need big jaws and you need big muscles of mastication. We didn't. We're eating softer and softer food. We had stone tools about 3.3 million years ago that were sharpened. We could use this to cut and dismember animals. That was very helpful. And we started going from there. But there's evidence that their ancestors were using stones as to crack open the skulls of animals for millions of years before that. So we didn't need to develop our teeth and our claws like a lion did, because we developed our brains instead. And so we developed tools, we developed tactics, we figured out how to take down a mastodon that outclassed us by every physical metric. But because of our brains and our tools, we were able to kill them and dismember them and eat them and even store them for the year, and then get them back the next year. There's evidence that we were doing mammoth drops, like the Native Americans were doing buffalo drops. They'd scare a herd of buffalo over a cliff, they'd crash and burn, and you'd harvest them.
I've seen drawings and paintings of that.
Yeah, and so there's evidence that early humans were doing that with woolly mammoths over 1 million years ago, right? So we figured out how to take these things down, and that's why we developed our brains, and that's why we live in houses and lions don't, right? That's the difference in that we have big brains because we had to figure out how we could get food, how to become apex predators, even though we didn't have the physical characteristics for it, right? So we had tools, and our brains made us apex predators, not our teeth and our claws. And our teeth are carnivore teeth because they're small. They can absolutely rip and tear and render meat. They do a very good job at that. Say, oh, it's flat teeth. No, flat teeth are planar on the surface of them, so that you can move your teeth, and it's just like a grain mill, and you're just sort of grinding these things down. We have bicuspid teeth. We can't do that. So if you clench your teeth and try to move your jaw, it's not going to go anywhere. So it doesn't do anything, right? Because we don't have those planar flat teeth. They look flat at the front. That's not what flat teeth mean. So flat teeth are like a horse, where they touch each other is flat. So that's what flat teeth are. We don't have those. We have a very low stomach pH. It's about 1.5 to 2. And that's down there with vultures. And lions are around at 2, vultures are around 1.5. So that's what you see in animals eating meat, because you're having, again, in a higher bacterial load, because you might be getting rotting meat or dealing with intestinal contents and things like that. And so you have to have
one stomach, which is a big difference between typical sort of obligate herbivores.
Well, and certainly yes, and then even with monogastrics, right? So like other primates would be monogastrics, but they're hindgut digesters, right? So it's not like a cow that's a foregut digester that will ferment this thing in the first part of their gut. You have to ferment vegetation, right? Because no animal, none, not even termites, can break down fiber. We just don't have cellulase that breaks down cellulose, right? So you have to ferment it. So it's the microbes in their gut that ferment this and actually eat the fiber, and then produce as a byproduct saturated fat. And then the microbes die off and they get absorbed as protein. So the herbivore eats fiber, but what they absorb is saturated fat and protein. So again, why are we thinking that saturated fat's a bad thing when all animals thrive on it? Carnivores because they eat animals that are made out of meat and saturated fat, and herbivores because they're eating fiber that turns into saturated fat and protein. So it doesn't make really any sense that it would be bad for us and nothing else. I mean, even if we were herbivores, we would be turning fiber into saturated fat. So why the hell was saturated fat bad for us all of a sudden? Yeah. But we're not. So when we look at our guts, our small intestine is actually a lot longer than our large intestine, sort of named backwards, but it's just talking about the caliber, the thickness of our intestine. That's why it's small and large. But the small intestine is actually much longer. And that's where we do all of our digestion and absorption of these nutrients. And it gets in the colon. Yes, there's a bit of fermentation that happens, nothing really to write home about. And then we desiccate the stool, and then we eliminate it. We have an appendix. It's that big, right? It's the size of your pinky. But in hindgut digesters, like other primates, koalas and koalas even, but also our closer ancestors like the chimpanzee and the gorilla, it's a cecum, and that's several feet long. And that's where fiber packs into. It's a blind pouch where that packs into, and that ferments and ferments and ferments. It can sit there for a long time fermenting. and turning into saturated fat and protein. We lost that ability. That's a vestigial cecum because we haven't done that in millions of years. So that's very good evidence that we haven't been eating fibrous plants for millions of years because we lost that trait. That has shrunk down. There's, it takes the digestive tract is very expensive, and so we had to sort of swap out something here for our brain. But yeah, so we needed to have much higher density nutrition, something that was much more easy to break down and absorb and get a lot of energy quickly in our small intestine, and not have to sit there and ferment it in a big large intestine, which is what gorillas do, which is why they have those big guts. It was just a lot of intestine, a lot of crap, right? So there's a lot of
literally
a lot of stuff there.
Yeah.
And so we have flat stomachs, right? And and the idea that they say is like, well, if you eat meat, you can't digest it. It takes 10 years to digest. Like, it's a
hear that one all the time.
It goes one way. Like, if it was going to take 10 years for you to digest it, you would have eliminated it. You would have crapped it out, years ago. So, that doesn't make sense. But, obviously we don't break down fiber at all. So it doesn't 10 years, 50 years, 5,000 years, you're never going to break down fiber. You don't have the enzymes for it, right? And so what does that happen? That has to go out. And we're told that's good for us. You want this indigestible fiber so that there's peristalsis and can move through. Well, if meat was doing that, wouldn't that be a good thing too? Just like fiber just moves things through, right? No, it's a bad thing. It just sits there. So the fiber just
putrefies,
goes right by it, but the meat sticks there. Like, people are trying to get this wrong, I think. And so, there's all those sorts of things, but there are many, many more. I mean, just physiologically, we're not designed to run on carbohydrates. We call this a fed state and a fasting state. In fact, that's changed now. My niece is in biochemistry now. She's pre-med in the US. And she was telling me, because she's taking biochemistry this year, she's saying they don't call it a fed state and a fasting state anymore. They call it a carbohydrate metabolism and a non-carbohydrate metabolism.
Ah, interesting.
Which makes much more sense, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
And so it's well, at least in her program they do that now. So at least people are starting to think about this, because of course that's not a fed state and a fasting state. If you eat anything except carbohydrates, it also looks like you're fasting. It's just an insulin variation state, right? So insulin goes up to deal with carbohydrates because carbohydrates are toxic. When carbohydrates get too high, they cause excess glycation, excess AGEs, advanced glycation end products, and they damage your body from the inside out. And over the years and decades, this can kill you. You can lose your toes, your feet, your legs, and then your kidneys and your heart and your life. This is what kills diabetic.
A lot of people don't realize with diabetics, it's usually those other issues which lead to mortality and morbidity.
Yeah, exactly. So, and that's a consequence of just having slightly too high blood sugar, and not even that much. We have around 5 or 4 grams of glucose in our body, depending on the size of the body. And that's throughout your entire circulatory system. So that's all the glucose you need. A level teaspoon is all the glucose you need to run all the processes in your body and your brain. And if you get 1 extra gram of glucose, that's actually a toxic load to your body. Your body responds to it as a toxin by trying to detoxify it, by raising your insulin up to try to get this down below 4 grams. And the problem with that, and the problem with the American Diabetics Association, which says you don't have to limit carbs if you're a diabetic, just make sure you get enough insulin. Just make sure you get the right amount of insulin to keep your blood sugar at the right level. Well, that's a problem because insulin doesn't just affect blood sugar. It affects over 100 different processes in your body. And so now if your insulin's at a 5, your fasting insulin's at a 5, it's affecting everything at a 5. Then you eat a bunch of sugar and it spikes up to 35. Now you're affecting everything at a 35. And over the years, you develop insulin resistance and that starts going up and up and up. And now everything's being affected at a 12 and now a 20 and now a 30. I had a gentleman come into my practice the other day who had a fasting insulin of 72. That should never be above 9.
72
fasting.
Wow.
Fasting. So imagine
I've seen like 14, 15, and I think, that's on the high end.
It is. Wow. It is on the high end. Wow. But this was 72 fasting. And I was just like, you're definitely fasting. Yeah, I was fasting for 24 hours. I'm like, okay.
All right. Jeez.
So
Yeah.
yeah, so that's affecting everything at a 72. And we say, well, you need to fast because, and we were discussing, people like Peter Attia off camera. He's a big proponent of fasting. Dr. Sinclair at Harvard, big proponent of fasting. Once every 3 months, you should fast for 5 days. You get that autophagy. You get these things cleared up. Look up autophagy and look up what the consequences of insulin. Elevated insulin decreases autophagy. That's what's happening when you're fasting. When you fast for a number of days, you get your insulin down, and then you're just basically taking the anchor off, and you're allowing your body to do what it's supposed to do. Your body's always supposed to be going through autophagy. Your body's always supposed to be turning over damaged parts of your cells and organelles and mitochondria and swapping them out for better ones. That's what you're designed to do. Why would we be designed to, we have to starve in order to be healthy?
And evidence now shows even in healthy, lean individuals, just doing exercise is enough to increase autophagy to the same level or higher than fasting.
Well, there you go. Yeah. And the thing is too, if you just have low insulin, you're always going through autophagy. You never have to fast. Autophagy doesn't come from it's not a consequence of starving yourself and not eating. And people say that, oh, your body's turning it over and using these things as as energy to eating up these old cells. No, it's just a natural process that our body does. It's just natural housekeeping. And if your insulin is low at a normal level, you're always going through that. And so imagine, you have low insulin and you're exercising, you're going to be healthy. And that is literally what we're designed to do. We're physical beings. We're physical creatures. We're meant to be out there doing things with our body, hunting, chasing, fighting, and other things. And we're also supposed to be eating meat. And if you're doing that, if you're active and healthy and you're eating what you're biologically designed to eat, your body's going to work the way it's biologically designed to work. And so, you bring your fasting insulin down either through diet or fasting, and these things are going to turn on. So, metabolically, we're not designed to eat plants because we don't ferment them. We don't ferment fiber into saturated fat. So we're having to eat these starches and these sugars to get energy, which we are not designed for. We're not designed to eat these things. And it causes harm. It causes metabolic dysfunction and distress. And we raise our insulin because our body is desperately trying to keep our blood sugar below that certain amount. You make blood sugar. Blood sugar is going to be perfectly normal if you just leave it alone. That's how we're designed to work. It's only when you start eating excess or exogenous carbohydrates that you start throwing off that balance, and our body upends our entire metabolism and all these other sorts of functions that insulin controls by trying to raise your insulin to get this stuff down. So it's worth it to your body to completely rearrange over 100 different mechanisms in your body by elevating insulin in order to keep your blood sugar down. That's how toxic excess blood sugar is. So, I look at that as something we're not designed for, and we're not designed for it. Where it's toxic to us, And so I definitely avoid all that myself. So there's all these different things that you can look at that tell us that we're not designed to eat plants. And you look at the evidence for in the fossil record. 2.5 million years ago, well, we're eating more and more meat, and we're using stone tools in order to get meat. We weren't getting stone tools to, hoe the ground and grow, corn and potatoes, right? We were using this to kill and dismember animals. And there's all sorts of areas where people were living, and there's just piles of bones and stone tools. Stone tools, and so and markings of stone tools being cut in. There's certain ways that you butcher an animal to cut the meat off the bone with a sharp implement, and we see evidence of that. Stone tools cutting into that, and you can see the residue of it, and it's yes, that's from this stone tool, and you can see the markings of it. That fits perfectly with the edge of this. They were using this to dismember an animal. And so we have a lot of evidence for that. We have the stable isotope studies, which they take stable nitrogen 15, and you can actually look at the trophic levels, basically the food chain. So you can see which animals were just eating plants, and they would have a smaller level of nitrogen 15. And then the animals that ate plants would have a higher trophic level. And then the animals that ate those would have a higher trophic level, and so on. And so you can actually differentiate the food chain. And early humans were found to have the highest trophic level, meaning they were at the top of the food chain. So they had a higher carnivore rating than lions, hyenas, foxes, and wolves alive at the same time in the same area, presumably because we were eating the lions and hyenas and foxes and wolves in that area. The Smithsonian had a funny article that said that early humans hunted cave lions to extinctions for throw rugs. That was the title of this. We had all these pelts and all these sorts of things that people would lay on. Now, who knows what their motivation was? They just thought it was pretty, or it's competition for resources, and they're hunting the same things they're hunting. They're hunting them sometimes, and so they were like, okay, we're going to take out this threat.
Even the megafauna,
way,
right? Like that's one of the theories of the extinction of the megafauna is we just ate them all. Like we hunted them all and now they're gone.
That's the idea. I do think it was a bit too abrupt for that, though. I mean, certainly
a combination of.
I think, yeah. I mean, we were definitely hunting the hell out of these things, but all the megafauna dying out on every continent at the same time is a bit curious, and and in the sort of the extreme areas. I mean, we were in these extreme areas. We were in the ice ages, and that's another thing too. How do you survive on plants during an ice age in the Arctic Circle? Right. And so what they'll say is they'll lie. I mean, this is the thing. A lot of these people will just make things up. They want to fit their ideology. They want us to be plant-based. They want us to have been herbivores. And then so they make things up. They don't look at the evidence and say, okay, what does the evidence show? They say, well, what would it have to show in order for me to be right? And so they say, yeah, well, during the ice ages, we weren't in the ice. People went down towards the equator and they were fine. So you're wrong. Like, well, actually, they didn't. The fossil record is very clear that as the ice shelf started coming down, Homo habilis went up into the ice. They didn't run away from it. They went into it. They attacked into it. And this is why we have evidence of fire and cooking going back at least 800,000 years. Some people think as much as 1.5 million years. And some people, such as Professor Bill Schindler, is a professor of archaeology and paleoanthropology at the University of Maryland, who wrote a book called Eat Like a Human, who was just basically eat meat, and if you're going to eat plants, you have to detoxify these things in these traditional ways like fermentation and so on that we've developed over thousands of years of being forced to eat more plants because the megafauna died out. But his theory is that we've actually had fire for around 2.5 million years because Homo habilis did go up into the ice. And that's a lot easier to do if you have fire.
Yeah.
If it's freezing cold and you have access to fire, you're going to be a lot more confident going into the ice where the megafauna is, where the woolly mammoths are, and that's what we were eating. So at some point in the last sort of 15,000 years or so, all these megafauna died out throughout North America, South America, Europe, Asia, and Africa. And so that suggests more of a cataclysmic event. And interestingly, the fossil record of the tools and the tool using humans in North America about 13,000 years ago sort of advanced to a point, and then you don't see anything for about 2,000 years. And then the next set of tools are more primitive than the last iteration. And then they start building up from there. So that also suggests a cataclysmic event where there's a mass die out, a mass extinction, and then people had to sort of scrabble and survive and then sort of reestablish themselves as well. So I think that's yes, we were definitely hunting the hell out of these things, but they we were doing that for like 2 million years, but they all died. All these things died at the same time. All around. And, you had these giant birds, like basically, big bird with teeth, it was going around South America and going around just attacking 12-foot tall carnivorous bird with teeth. And they're all dead too, So it's interesting that all these massive animals died out sort of like that. And so I think there must have been a bit of a cataclysmic sort of event that
usually if it's a full mass extinction like that where everything is gone, you would normally point to that. And plus the population of our species at that time probably wasn't sufficient enough to wipe out all of them.
Yeah,
Whereas now that might be the case.
yeah, exactly. Yeah. Well, that's the thing. No. I mean, you look up the definition of an apex predator, and humans are in there. The Cambridge Dictionary version definition of an apex predator is animals that eat other animals and don't have natural predators. And one of the which definitely applies to us, and 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 one of the examples in the Cambridge definition says humans as apex predators, even though they're apex predators, still will get killed by other apex predators, out in the woods, like, bears and lions and wolves and things like that.
Yeah.
But it's in the definition, and yet people are saying, oh, no, humans are herbivores and this thing. No, we're really not. No, we're
Yeah,
apex
all
predators.
evidence would suggest not.
Well, and in fact, we're not even classified as apex predators. We're classified as super predators, because no animal has ever been as successful at hunting than we are. We have hunted every single animal alive on Earth, from the skies to the depths of the oceans, right? So from land, air, and sea, we've taken down all of these things. And that's not necessarily something to be proud of, but it does tell you our prowess as hunters. Oh, but if you didn't have a gun, you wouldn't be able to do it. Yeah, but we do have guns. That's the entire point. We have brains that could figure out how to make a gun and make a spear and make these and use these tactics and tools. And that's what made us apex predators, and you even see, like, the Maasai and other African tribes. They'll go up to like some cheetahs, or other
videos.
predators that take down a gazelle, and they'll just go and they'll just start beating them with sticks and scaring them off. The other person drags them off. The cheetahs are freaking out, and they go in. The guy's just calmly just whipping them in the face with a switch. Like, if those cheetahs went after them, that switch wasn't going to stop them. But they're so confident, and they smack them in the face, and the cheetahs just don't know what to do with it. And they can just let you do let the cheetahs do the work, and then come in and take the meat. Hyenas do that. Hyenas don't do a lot of hunting. They come in and scare off the other animals that make the kill, and eat their food. So, there's a lot of different ways that humans could get meat, and we figured out a lot of them. But at the end of the day, we did figure out how to do this, and we've been able to hunt on every aspect of the planet and every animal on the planet. And in fact, we've hunted many animals out to extinction. Whales, we nearly hunted to extinction for oil, for clean burning lamp oil, and then, say what you want about Rockefeller, but by making kerosene so cheap and available, it literally saved the whales, because it was cheaper to get kerosene than it was to get whale oil. And so that it killed the whaling industry, which is good. That was a good thing, that we did that. So
that's the era we're in now, right? I guess of figuring out that balance, even though, we are definitely apex predators. I think that's where a lot of the argument comes from. There's the nutritional component, but then there's the ethical component. And obviously we talk a lot about regenerative agriculture, and it's not something we need to go into here. But I think the first recognition is we definitely eat meat. We ate a lot of it clearly in our evolutionary past, and that's what we should be eating. And so when we're talking about health and nutrition, we should, certainly take that into consideration.
Yeah, well, I mean, and you look at the clear disparity in the fossil record immediately prior to agriculture and immediately after agriculture. Everywhere you look at this, even in the modern era with Native Americans and Native Australians, the same events occurred. The height and the health of the people declined. They had more infectious disease. Their brains were smaller. Their jaws were smaller. Their teeth were crowded. They were shorter. They had more signs of infectious disease and other sorts of issues and ailments that they were subject to. So they had evidence for the first time of tuberculosis in the spinal column. You didn't see that before then. Dr. J.H. Salisbury, as a New York doctor in the 1800s, for whom the Salisbury steak is named after, he found putting people on a red meat and water diet would cure rheumatoid arthritis, Crohn's, gout, ulcerative colitis, chronic Lyme disease, and yes, even tuberculosis. Putting people on a red meat and water diet was very helpful for treating tuberculosis. And again, we didn't really see tuberculosis in the fossil record until after agriculture. And so there was a professor of paleoanthropology from Cambridge University in England, who said, and I'll read it out to you. said when populations around the globe started turning to agriculture around 10,000 years ago, regardless of their location and regardless of the type of crop, a similar trend occurred. The height and health of the people declined. Skeletal analysis suggests that these Neolithic peoples experienced greater physiological stress due to undernutrition and infectious disease. And that happened everywhere as a consequence of agriculture. And then you don't see these problems in the native cultures that are still eating meat or largely eating meat. You have the Maasai, you have the Inuit in the early 20th century. They were extraordinarily healthy. They did not get any of these chronic diseases. There is a large study out of the British did when they were down with the Maasai and their neighbors, the Akikuyu, who were largely plant-based. So the Akikuyu were largely plant-based. Maasai were meat-based, even though they had at that point in the 20s, because it was done in the 1920s and published in 1931. They started eating like millet seeds, not much, but they had started at that point where traditionally they wouldn't have any. Whereas Akikuyu were largely plant-based, but they were in the same area. They were alive at the same time in the same area, and they interbred, so they were genetically similar. So it's a very good comparison. You have a whole food animal-based diet and a whole food plant-based diet, and you look at the disparities, and they were exactly the same as you saw pre and post agriculture. The Maasai men were on average 5 inches taller. Again, a genetically similar stock. 23 pounds heavier, lean body mass. They're stick skinny. They don't have an ounce of fat on them, and 50% stronger, the Maasai men. And they were much healthier. They looked at medical records. They went to clinics. They went to the hospitals. They got all the records for all these people. But then they said, well, not everybody has access to these clinics. So they went from village to village to village to village to village, studying them and examining them themselves. And they found that the Akikuyu were far less healthy, had far more infectious disease, far more chronic disease, far more nutritional deficiencies and dental caries and cavities and all these problems that the Maasai didn't. The sickest of all were the Akikuyu men, and they ate mostly grains. The Akikuyu women were slightly more healthy than them, and they ate more leafy greens and a varied diet. And I've seen vegan liars try to critique this study and say, oh, well, the Akikuyu women were actually the healthiest out of all of them. No, they weren't, idiot. they were only better than the Akikuyu men.
They were the best of the worst.
Number 3. Yeah, well, people just lie and no one checks, and so it's just it just that's how you get misinformation out there. You get someone who lies, and then no one checks and sees if they're lying. So that person was lying. The Maasai women were much healthier than the Akikuyu women, and in fact, the disparities in height and strength were actually more stark between the Maasai women and the Akikuyu women than the Maasai men and the Akikuyu men. And the Maasai men were the healthiest of all. They almost didn't get sick at all. They were extremely healthy, and that's because they were eating more blood and more meat. So the Maasai would drink a lot of milk, especially the women would drink a lot of milk. The kids would drink a lot of milk, and the warrior class men would get more of the blood and the meat because they needed to be stronger. They needed to be bigger because they were the ones defending everybody else from either other aggressive tribes or aggressive lions that were coming after them and their herds. And so these people had to fight off lions with sticks and win. And so they had to be very, very strong and adept physically. So, and they did. It used to be a coming of age sort of thing that you, as a male, it was a big thing that you went out and you killed a lion with sticks, right? So you had to go one-on-one with a lion and take it down. It's usually not one-on-one because usually there's a pride of lions that come with that lion.
Yeah, good luck.
Yeah, exactly. So that was something that Lane Norton said. He was just like, so, if you're an apex predator, then go and fight another apex predator like a grizzly bear or a lion or a cougar. I'll even give you a spear. You said you're an apex predator, right? Go and do it. Like, people do that right now every day. There's a YouTube channel of a guy who goes and hunts grizzly bears with spears right now.
Wow, I've not seen that.
Yeah, it's pretty wild, actually.
I've seen even videos of still places where they're wrestling bulls down to the ground, and like, we're quite capable even without tools, which is surprising with adequate training and experience. But then you put tools in our hands, it takes it to another level.
Yeah, they do that here in Australia.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
so they have a lot of, spears, and they have these adalaps, which are, sort of this spear throwing device, sort of like a stick like this with a little hole at this side. You put the spear in there, and you sort of give this sort of lever force, and you just launch this thing like 200 yards, and and so they have these spears. They can nail a kangaroo 200 yards away, and just drop it. But they also use fire, make this ring of fire around this big herd of kangaroo, and they make this ring, and it's all of a sudden they're closing in, closing in, closing in, closing in, and it actually just burns them, and it actually burned to death. It's actually pretty nasty, but that was a way of taking out a whole herd of kangaroo and then having meat for the whole tribe for a while. And that was part of their ways of hunting these things. But another way they do it is just in endurance hunting, which is you just chase them.
Yeah.
And humans are actually fantastic runners. Like we're not going to
Really well adapted to that.
Yeah, we're not necessarily going to have the same top speed as other animals. It's not like we're not going to get like a gazelle, like a cheetah or something like that. It's going to catch it on fat, but we just keep going and going and going, and eventually they wear out. And especially in these big hot climates, we're more adept to dealing with these hot climates. We don't have fur. We're taller and skinnier, so we're not getting this direct sun. We're not getting more sun exposure. And so you can chase them. And I know people here who live out in the bush in Australia and actually do this endurance hunting. And they chase them. They said that most animals, after about a kilometer, they just collapse. They can't go any further. And so you're just running after them, and it's not even that long. It's like you're running a kilometer, which is a little more than half a mile, and they can't do it anymore. They're just too exhausted. They're just too heat exhausted. We get to sweat. We're breathing off. They have to just pant, and that's how they cool down.
Yeah,
they're not. We're sweating. We're cooling off. We're able to self-regulate a bit better, and we don't have fur, so we're even better than that. And they just go, and so they would just run them down until they just collapse, and you can go and eat them, cut their throat, do whatever, bash them with a rock. Back in the early days, do whatever you needed to do. This person that does that, he does actually live out in the bush, and he hunts. And so he will hunt that way, but sometimes he does it just for practice, and he'll just chase them down and then touch them and then walk away, and just to sort of keep in practice. But you can do those sorts of endurance hunting. Now, this does take a bit of tools, but one of the things that the Australian Aboriginals do now is they'll go and they'll find like a scrub cow or like a bull or something like that, and which means it's just this thing that got away and is now living out in the wild, but sort of by itself. And they'll have these outback trucks, and they'll sort of chase it with the truck, and they'll pull up next to it, and then someone will be in the back and then jump out onto its neck and wrestle it down to the ground and cut its throat at that point. So actually we're it's actually pretty incredible what people can do just one-on-one with these animals. But the thing is that, again, we are apex predators, and the simple fact that the evidence for that is that we are, because we do hunt other animals. It doesn't matter how you hunt them. We do hunt them, and we are very successful at that. And again, early humans hunted cave lions to extinction, right? For throw rugs or for meat or for reducing competition, but we did hunt them to extinction. So that means we hunted, and we've hunted apex predators to extinction, which means we're above that apex predator.
Well above that.
Yeah. Humans hunt more apex predators more successfully than any other apex predator ever. Right. And so it's very strange that people are just arguing over simple definitions and terms, but I guess that's the world we live in. And this isn't new, actually. This happened in ancient Greece. There was Thucydides. Actually, it was a general in the Peloponnesian War, and then a historian, and chronicled a lot of military events. He chronicled a civil war between two city-states, or between a city-state in ancient Greece, and he was marveling. He's just like, they're changing the meaning of words in order to push political ideology and push their political point. And he was just blown away. He's like, what the hell is going on? They're changing the definition of words. They're saying that this means this. This has always meant this other thing, but now they're saying it means this thing, and they're trying to push some sort of agenda. We see that's propaganda 101.
It's very clear today. Very clear.
Exactly. Yeah. And so now we're doing that with Apex. Oh, no, no, no. Humans are herbivores. What are you talking about? Like, no, we're not. So I think we need to be clear about this, and you need to hold our guns here that these words have meaning, and they are clear, and we need to hold people to that. We don't let them mess around with that. I think one interesting thing, we have these studies looking at, because people say, well, plant-based diets are so good. Look at all these studies. Well, they're all epidemiology. They're all
Yeah.
survey studies. The nurses study is just a joke. I know some of the nurses that are in this study, and they say, what we do? Once a year, we get an email that say, fill out this questionnaire, and we have to try to remember all the things we've eaten in the last year.
Yeah.
Right? So it's not
Little
even
food
perspective.
frequency questionnaires.
Yeah, well, it's not even like, hey, look, all these people are in the study. It's a long-term study. So why wouldn't you say, hey, track down every meal that you've eaten for the next year? That would actually give you useful information. But no, they're saying, hey, try and remember what you ate last year. It's impossible. You're not going to
Yeah.
do it. And so that's going to be inherently flawed and useless. And so they can now, but they want that to be useless because now they can manipulate that data to say whatever they want, and they do. But you look at the Akikuyu and the Maasai, it's very clear. And then those studies, the epidemiology survey studies, they're not comparing what we're talking about. They're comparing a standard diet with more a plant-based diet. So we were talking off camera about this study with isothiocyanates, and it said, well, look, more plants in this study with 2,000 people in Costa Rica, people that survived a heart attack were given a survey, say how much vegetables you eat, and also other things. And they found that the people that ate more vegetables had less heart attacks, or at least survived less. So who knows? Maybe they died more. But they also found that they were more affluent. They ate 800 less calories per day on average, which is not insignificant. They ate half the sugar. They smoked half as much, and they had far less diabetes. All of those things are going to be in your favor for not getting a heart attack. And so healthy user bias, right? So is it the plants? Is it that people that eat more plants are more healthy, or is it that healthy people eat more plants because they think it's healthy, right? And so you had that healthy user bias there, but then they looked at the genetic differences between these people. They found that 20% of them had a gene that made it more difficult for them to eliminate isothiocyanates. Now we know that isothiocyanates are toxins, and these plant toxins are toxins because our body tries to detoxify them and eliminate them and clear them from the body. It says, no, we want these out. And so I would trust my biology and body far more than I would trust any stupid epidemiology paper or any nutritionist saying, no, 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 you want these toxins. No, I don't want these toxins because my body doesn't want these toxins. They're trying to get rid of these toxins. And so they looked at those people that weren't able to clear it as much as the others, and they found that those who weren't able to clear it and had higher levels of isothiocyanates had more heart attacks, right? So that's suggesting that no, they're not good for you. So you look at the Maasai, you look at the Akiku, you look at whole food plant-based diet with a whole food meat-based diet, you see clear disparity. Meat wins. You look at these other studies, say, oh, you eat more vegetables. Eat more vegetables compared to what? Eat more vegetables compared to eating a processed food diet with a bunch of sugar and cigarettes and all these other sorts of things. Right? You're comparing apples and oranges, and you have healthy user bias. So what you need to do is you need a whole food meat-based diet with a whole food plant-based diet. That's what you get with the Maasai and Akikuyu. But we actually have that. What people don't realize is the most rigorously studied diet on earth, really the only diet that's been rigorously studied, is the ketogenic diet. All these plant-based diets are all comparing apples to oranges, and also are just survey studies. They're nothing special. So the only thing with high level interventional trials, randomized control trials showing clear endpoints and specific disease outcomes is the ketogenic diet. Now, a ketogenic diet just means you're not eating carbohydrate, sugar, alcohol, and so you're keeping your blood sugar down, your insulin down, and your ketones up, right? So you're in a non-carbohydrate metabolism, or what we used to call a fasting metabolism, and which is why we looked at it as a fasting mimicking diet. Oh, what if you mimic fasting? Then what will that outcome be? And it's actually very beneficial. So that's the most efficacious diet that we've ever found. It went head to head with the DASH diet and beat it soundly. And for all these different health outcomes, we've found literally thousands of studies showing benefit of a ketogenic diet for Alzheimer's, for reversing diabetes, for autoimmune issues, for many other issues. But we have to ask ourselves, okay, it's just eliminating carbohydrates and we're lowering that insulin. All that's going to be good. But what kind of ketogenic diet? Well, you could do it plant-based. You're just removing carbohydrates. So you'd have to have a lot of seed oils and plant fats and a lot of supplements because you'd be missing quite a lot of nutrients, and you get rid of carbohydrates, and it's very difficult to get enough energy from plants. So it'd be very difficult to do that. And so they don't. None of these studies looked at a plant-based ketogenic diet. They're all animal-based ketogenic diet. So they replaced carbohydrates with meat, with animal fat and animal protein. And so all of these ketogenic diet studies, thousands of these things that are rigorously controlled and designed. Not all of them. Some of them are actually garbage. Some will say like, oh, low carb. I was like, well, low carb isn't no carb. And how low carb, and they say like, oh, these people are having like 100, 120 grams of carbs. Like, yeah, that's not low carb. And you look at what it's comparing to, and they're like similar amounts of carbs. It's like, okay, well, I can see why that wasn't as successful. But the ones that actually do it properly, very successful, very beneficial to health for specific health points and outcomes and medical outcomes. That is a meat-based diet. That is a whole food meat-based diet, high fat meat diet. It's carnivore with a side salad. It's carnivore light. So the best study on earth is an animal-based diet, not a plant-based diet. And that's what people should always remember.
Yeah, so valuable. And again, it just adds to the growing amount of data that is already there, but yet we seem to be still fighting the good fight of trying to get that in front of more and more people. But
That's
I
it.
realize we're coming up to time as well, and I know that you have something else coming up. So I wanted to quickly just pick your brain a little bit for people who maybe are considering starting this way of eating, who are maybe new to carnivore or curious about it. What are the best ways for people to get started? Do you have any particular tips? I know you have a program as well for helping people. So anything you could share for people that want to dive into this world?
Yeah, well, I mean, do have a program. It's just called, if you go to howtocarnivore.com, there's a website there. I mean, people do have to pay for that because we set that up and we have weekly Zoom meetings and interaction with people and answering questions and things like that. So it does take time, but you don't necessarily need that. It does give a bit of a support structure and a bit more of a guided way of getting into it, but you don't necessarily need to do that. I have a lot of videos on YouTube that people can look at. One's called Carnivore Diet for Beginners, and there's actually a playlist on my YouTube channel. My YouTube channel is just my name, Anthony Chaffee, MD, and there's a playlist called Getting Started on a Carnivore Diet. It has a lot of videos on there that I think are really good to watch. And I think that's the main thing, is just educate yourself in the area. Understand that humans are designed to eat meat biologically. This is what we're designed for, and that plants actually do cause harm. I have a lecture that I gave at a medical conference called "Plants Are Trying to Kill You," and I go into all the data for that. And it's very important to understand that, because if you're eating plants that your body's not designed for, your species isn't designed for, it will cause harm to greater or lesser degrees. And so why would you even want harm being done to your body, even to a lesser degree? And so, well, I ate a salad last week and I didn't die. Like, yeah, well, you also smoked 2 packs of cigarettes and a bottle of whiskey. You didn't die, right? But over the years, over the decades, this builds up and it causes harm over time. And that's the point, is that if you want to age as gracefully as possible, you want to live as long as you can without disease, then you want to put only things in your body that are good for you and nothing that is harmful, even marginally. And that's the premise. But so people can watch those, and those videos I think are very helpful to get people to understand why we're doing this. But it's the most important thing. You can understand how to do it, and the Carnivore for Beginners will tell you how to do it. But if you don't know why you're doing it and why it's so important, you're less likely to stick to it long term, and that's the most important thing. And so watching those videos on why to do it, I have a video on carnivore versus vegan diets, why we are carnivores, plants are trying to kill you. You just watch those things, you just get the basics, and you say like, okay, that makes sense. Plants are toxic. We're supposed to eat meat. We need to eat meat. This makes a bit more sense. And then you feel how good you feel on a carnivore diet after a month or two, and you're like, wow, I never want to stop doing this, which is where I'm at. I have no interest in stopping this because I just feel fantastic and I feel better and better each year. The main thing that people can think about is just eat meat. Don't be afraid of meat. Don't be afraid of fat. Animal fat is very good for you. Plant fats are very harmful for you. The industrial seed oils were an invention. In the last 100 years, they were
That's a
industrial
whole area we
lubricant.
can dive into for sure.
That's it. Yeah, it's an industrial lubricant, and then someone said, "Hey, we can just feed this to people, and they'll buy it." And then Procter and Gamble bought Crisco from the Germans, who used it as a tank lubricant, and then they paid the American Heart Association $20 million to say that it was good for your heart and better for your heart than animal fats like lard and butter. So I mean, these are just cons, and these are these industries that are trying to make a buck. But if you just eat more meat and you're not afraid of meat and you're not afraid of fat and you stop eating carbs and you stop eating sugar and you stop drinking alcohol, you're going to improve your life in ways that you have never imagined before. And just eating more and more meat, which is what your body needs, is going to really improve your life. And eating less and less, certainly cut out all the processed foods, but then cut out the carbohydrates, cut out the sugars, cut out the alcohol. You're going to improve a lot. And if you reduce the amount of vegetation, or at least vary it up, because different plants have different toxins in them. So if you're eating spinach every single day, that's going to build up. And in fact, Liam Hemsworth, the actor, put himself in the hospital with acute oxalate poisoning from drinking spinach smoothies every day for 3 weeks.
Smoothies.
Green smoothies. Yeah. So don't do that. Don't eat the same veggies every day, and then try to cut it out. At some point, just try 30 days of just fatty meat and water, whatever meat you enjoy and you like, and that tastes good and makes you feel the best. Do that. Most of the time it's red meat. Red meat makes people feel the best. You just try that for 30 days and see how you feel. You'll feel amazing, and you'll want to keep going with it. Some people take a bit longer to adapt, but everybody gets there in the end, and most people will do it within 30 days. But if you learned about why this is important, then even if you're in that group that maybe takes a few months or even 6 months, then you'll get there eventually. And it is rare, but sometimes people say like, wow, I didn't feel great. I didn't have good energy for about 6 months. And then it hit and I just feel amazing now. I get all these benefits. Most people get those benefits within a few weeks. So hopefully that's you. But if it's not, it will come eventually.
Yeah, great. I think the mindset part is so important. The more people understand why, and also get down to their why of why they want to sort of improve things, that's going to make a big difference. And you've got plenty of resources. I think one area where people struggle is, well, why did the food guidelines say this? And I'll reference your video you did recently, where you did a presentation breaking down, the whole sort of con of where the dietary guidelines came from. So people can watch that video along with all your other videos. And I think that would be a great starting point for people.
Yeah. So it's good to understand the garbage. Yeah, that was like, the corruption of our nutritional medical guidelines are corrupt, and they are. I mean, they were corrupted by these industries and these special interests that had their interests at heart and not ours. And that's something that we have to understand, is that we need to protect ourselves first and foremost, and you can't just take people's word for it and take the guidelines word for it. Even the editor-in-chief of the Lancet and the New England Journal of Medicine also said we can't trust guidelines anymore. The guidelines, professional opinion, professional opinion, or expert opinion, I should say, and these studies, they're all corrupt. They're completely corrupt, and we can't trust them anymore, unfortunately. And there's reasons for that, and the corruption is documented. Even the corruption of the sugar companies paying off different researchers from Harvard and elsewhere to lie and say that cholesterol caused heart disease when it was much more likely to be sugar. That was their own internal memos where they said that they did it. Has now been published in the Journal of the American Medical Association in 2016. One of those professors from Harvard was named head of the USDA, and he was the one who authored and published the USDA declaration saying that cholesterol causes heart disease, saturated fat increases cholesterol. Stop eating both. Change the world. And what happened? The rates of heart disease
Everything
went up.
went to crap.
It went to hell. Become the fattest and sickest that human beings have ever been in human history. And heart attacks. First-time heart attacks have gone up. Oh, that's screening. No, it's a heart attack. You don't screen for heart attack. Pretty bad screening program if you don't catch it until after they have a heart attack, right? So more people are having their first heart attack in America right now than ever before. And around the world, this prevalence is going up, the incidence is going up, and the mortality is going up. In India, it's even worse. Oh, there's all these vegetarians, they're doing so well. No, they have some of the
Terrible.
worst
And
chronic
diabetes
disease
there
rates
now
in the world.
too. Yeah,
That's it.
plenty of
Crazy
issues.
diabetes rates, crazy heart
Massive.
disease rates. 1 in 4 people in India will die of a heart attack. And I think it's 1 in 3 men will die of a heart attack in India. So, the idea that this is super healthy to eat a plant-based diet is just asinine. And we already eat a plant-based diet. 75 to 80% of the standard American diet is plant-based. It's just processed plants, right?
Yeah.
But those are plants, right? So you say, okay, well, we get away from this. We start eating more whole fruits and vegetables. Right. Well, you're getting rid of processed foods. And eat less meat. Well, that's not eating less meat. That's eating less processed garbage. You're throwing the baby out with the bathwater. And ketogenic diet, that's whole meats and whole plants as veggies, and it's much better than these sorts of things. And that's the thing too. These fraudulent studies look at pizza and fast food and lasagna and things that may have an ingredient as meat, and they say that's meat. So if you eat pizza, that's meat. You eat pizza 3 days a week, you eat meat 3 days a week, right?
Yeah.
So people that eat meat less than this, it's just nonsense. It's intentionally fraudulent. It's intentionally misleading. And there are reasons for that, and that people can look up or watch my presentation on that. Or Belinda Fetke does an amazing presentation on this as well, the corruption of nutritional guidelines as well. She did a lot of deep diving into this because the Nutritional Council went after her husband, Gary Fetke, who's a orthopedic surgeon. He was curing people with diabetes with a ketogenic diet, with a meat-based carnivore ketogenic diet, and it stopped them from needing their legs amputated. And that he did not like amputating people's legs. It's really not a nice thing to do. Yeah, and so he was like, "Hey, this can stop your diabetes, so you don't need to get an amputation, or you need to have extensive amputation." And it worked. And the Australian Dietetics Association, the head of the Australian Dietetics Association, personally called the head of his hospital and said, "You need to fire him. You need to shut him up. You need to get his license taken away." And they attacked him, and they tried to get his license taken away for daring to give nutritional advice that actually worked. And their strings were actually pulled by the cereal companies, because the cereal companies are saying, "Hey, this damn ketogenic diet movement is killing our cereal sales. We need to shut these guys up. We need to get their licenses taken away, and we need to discredit them and cast them into obscurity so that we can get our sales up again." And they are the main funders of the American and the Australian and the European dietetics associations. So they pulled their card and tried to get him fired. Thankfully, that didn't work. And now a ketogenic diet is in the national schedule for treating diabetes in Australia.
Took a while, but
are protected. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
I mean, it only had to take, hard proof that you could completely reverse it before people said like, "Oh yeah, the disease of high blood sugar might be complemented by not eating sugar." Like, interesting.
Yeah. Who
would
would
have thought? Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, it's hard. I try to not be pessimistic, but it's hard to look at this and think, there isn't clearly something going on where people are suppressing information or modifying information. Like, it's very hard when you look at the plethora of evidence, unfortunately.
Yeah, exactly. And well, that's why we just have to keep doing this. We just have to keep putting out the right information and not budging, just hold our ground and just be like, "Nope, this is wrong. We've been misled." And people that are fighting against us are either uninformed or they're being paid by the industries that have been paying people for decades to push this stuff in the first. And that's been caught. A lot of these, TikTok influencers and things like that have been caught, supporting, aspartame and all these sorts of things that say, "Oh, it's all good and it's all healthy," even though they're being paid to say it, and they didn't disclose they were paying for it, and they got in trouble for that. But that not all of them have been publicly called out for that, or that leaked to the public. So we don't know who all the shills are, but you can guess, Lane Norton, so I mean, like, how could you be that dumb? How can you be a nutritionist and tell people to eat things that are devoid of nutrients? A guy eats Captain Crunch for breakfast. This guy says he has a PhD in nutrition. He doesn't know the first thing about nutrition. And, he doesn't know the first thing about, says he has a degree in biochemistry, and yet he has no idea the role that insulin plays in the body and the metabolism and fat storage and so on. type 1 diabetics can't store fat or muscle. They waste away until they die unless they get insulin. People with an insulinoma secreting insulin, massive amounts of insulin, get enormously obese. It doesn't matter what they eat. This is largely hormonally driven. And yet Lane, who pretends to have degrees in biochemistry and a PhD in nutrition, which, I mean, frankly shocks me. If he actually does, then it's appalling what the state of our education system is. But a degree in nutrition is like a degree in gender studies. It's the least the least scientifically rigorous study endeavor out there. Yeah. And so if you don't understand even those basic tenets of our own biochemistry, understand how much insulin affects the body, and you just say, yeah, just eat Captain Crunch, it doesn't matter, just calories in, calories out. What about the nutrients? What about the nutrients? I mean, wouldn't a nutritionist be interested in nutrients? What are the nutrients in Captain Crunch? It's very strange to me that people listen to this sort of advice, but it's and I have no doubt in my mind that he and others like him are doing this for very self-motivated reasons. And whether or not they're being directly paid as shills, they're doing this so that they can earn money, so that they can, sell their supplements and products and all these sorts of things. And I don't think that they have the best interest of people at heart. I have a day job, and this actually takes time away from that. And it's hard for me to do this and do that, but I do it because I think it's important. It's not because it's my job and I don't want it to be my job. I do it because it's important. And I do interviews like this because I think it's important. I don't get paid to do these things. I do this because it's important for people to know this information so that they can be healthy. So because as a doctor, I care about people's health. That's it. And so I want people to be healthy. I don't want them to be healthy because they paid me to be healthy. I just want them to be healthy. And I want to do the things that are helpful to people. Like if someone's in an accident, I can fix their spine so they can walk again. I can decompress the blood from their brain so that they can survive and then they can get back to their family. I don't want to just manage crippled people that are metabolically damaged and dying and just sort of piecing them together so they can just die slowly over 40 years. I want people to be healthy. The natural state of humanity is that of health. And that's what I want us to get back to, so that we as doctors can get back to doing what we're supposed to do, which is deal with those acute emergencies like we have been for thousands of years.
Amazing. I think it's a great way to close it off. And thank you so much for everything that you're doing in the space. You've really been one of the key figures now, really spreading this message across. And so thank you very much for what you're doing, and keep doing what you're doing.
No, well, thank you very much. You're very welcome. And it's been a pleasure. Thank you for having me.
Likewise. Thanks, Anthony.
Thanks.
Thanks for listening to today's episode. If you enjoyed the content, be sure to subscribe so you don't miss out on any future episodes. And if you're looking to add in nature's most nutrient-dense foods back into your diet, be sure to check out vitalorigin.com.au and use coupon SOURCE10 at checkout for an extra 10% off. We'll see you guys on the next episode.